The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He alone is in kinship with God, who has scorned wealth. Show me a man who is not a slave. One is a slave to lust, another to greed, another to ambition, and all men are slaves to fear. I will name you an ex-consul who is slave to an old hag, a millionaire who is slave to a serving maid. I will show you youths of the noblest birth in serfdom to pantomime players. No servitude is more disgraceful than that which is self-imposed. Beyond question, the feeling of a lover has in it something akin to friendship. One might call it friendship run mad. But though this is true, does anyone love for the sake of gain or promotion or renown? Pure love, careless of all other things, kindles the soul with desire for the beautiful object, not without the hope of a return of the affection. A few people in the crowd are capable of reflection. What is this world, they want to know, and who runs it? Someone must know, for no country or estate can function for any length of time without its governor or steward. And this design, so big, so beautiful, and so well planned, can it run on its own, haphazardly? Even if you're going to live 3,000 more years or 10 times that, remember, you cannot lose another life than the one you're living now, or live another one than the one you're losing. We can get rid of most sins if we have a witness who stands near us when we are likely to go wrong. The soul should have someone whom it can respect, one by whose authority it may make even its inner shrine more hallowed. Happy is the man who can make others better, not merely when he is in their company, but even when he is in their thoughts. As you kiss your son good night, says Epictetus, whisper to yourself, he may be dead in the morning. Don't tempt fate, you say, by talking about a natural event. Is fate tempted when we speak of grain being reaped? When the tyrant threatens and calls me, I say, whom do you threaten? If he says, I will put you in chains, I say, you threaten my hands and my feet. If he says, I will cut off your head, I reply, you threaten my head. If he says, I will throw you into prison, I say, you threaten the whole of this poor body. If he threatens me with banishment, I say the same. Whom then do I fear? The master of what? The master of things which are in my own power. There is no such master. Do I fear the master of things which are not in my power? And what are these things to me? Beasts avoid the dangers which they see, and when they have escaped them are free from care. But we men torment ourselves over that which is to come as well as over that which is past. Many of our blessings bring bane to us, for memory recalls the tortures of fear while foresight anticipates them. The present alone can make no man wretched. May not a man, however, despise wealth when it lies in his very pocket? Of course, he also is great-souled, who sees riches heaped up round him and after wondering long and deeply because they have come into his possession, smiles and hears rather than feels that they are his. It means much not to be spoiled by intimacy with riches, and he is truly great who is poor amidst riches. If you examine a man that has been well disciplined by philosophy, you'll find nothing that's unsound, foul, or false in him. Nothing that's servile, foppish, or fond. No selfish, no obnoxious and absconding practices. To give him his due, his business is always done. His life may be short, but never imperfect, so that no body can say he goes off the stage before the play is quite acted. How have you behaved to the gods, to your parents, to your siblings, to your wife, to your children, to your teachers, to your nurses, to your friends, to your relatives, to your slaves? Have they all had from you nothing wrong and unworthy, either word or deed? Consider all that you've gone through, all that you've survived, and that the story of your life is done, your assignment complete. How many unkind people have you been kind to? There were 30 tyrants surrounding Socrates, and yet they could not break his spirit. But what does it matter how many masters a man has? Slavery has no plural, and he who has scorned it is free, no matter amid how large a mob of overlords he stands. What tyrant or what thief or what courts of justice are formidable to those who have thus considered as things of no value the body and the possessions of the body? Change the age in which you live, and you have too much. But in every age, what is enough remains the same. In order to discover one grateful person, it is worthwhile to make trial of many ungrateful ones. I suppose if cattle had opinions, they would make fun of anyone interested in anything besides the grass. When we are guests at a dinner party, we content ourselves with the food on offer. If anyone were to tell the host to put out fish or cake, he would seem rude. In real life, however, we ask the gods for what they do not give, and this, though they have provided us with plenty. If you are a sailor on board a ship that makes port, you may decide to go ashore to bring back water. Along the way, you may stop to collect shellfish or pick greens, but you always have to remember the ship and listen for the captain's signal to return. When he calls, you have to drop everything, otherwise you could be bound and thrown on board like the livestock. So, it is in life. If, instead of greens and shellfish, you have taken on a wife and child, so much the better. But when the captain calls, you must be prepared to leave them behind and not give them another thought. If you are advanced in years, don't wander too far. You won't make it back in time when the summons reaches you. Keep the prospect of death, exile, and all such apparent tragedies before you every day, especially death, and you will never have an abject thought or desire anything to excess. Honey tastes bitter to a man with jaundice. People with rabies are terrified of water, and a child's idea of beauty is a ball. Why does that upset you? Do you think falsehood is less powerful than bile or a rabid dog? I should like also to state to you one of the distinctions of Chrysippus, who declares that the wise man is in want of nothing, and yet needs many things. On the other hand, he says, nothing is needed by the fool, for he does not understand how to use anything, but he is in want of everything. Some men indeed only begin to live when it is time for them to leave off living. And if this seems surprising to you, I shall add that, which will surprise you still more. Some men have left off living before they have begun. God sees all our souls freed from their fleshly containers, stripped clean of their bark, cleansed of their grime. He grasps with his intelligence alone what was poured and channeled from himself into them. If you learn to do the same, you can avoid a great deal of distress. When you see through the flesh that covers you, will you be unsettled by clothing, mansions, celebrity, the painted sets, the costume cupboard? The supreme good has also its own abode. It does not grow where ivory grows or iron. Do you ask where the supreme good dwells? In the soul. And unless the soul be pure and holy, there is no room in it for God. Continually remind yourself how many ambitions you have attained. When you see many ahead of you, think how many are behind. If you would thank the gods and be grateful for your past life, you should contemplate how many men you have outstripped. But what have you to do with the others? You have outstripped yourself. Where are you going, you poor souls? And what are you doing? You drift about as if you were blind. You forsake the right road for a cul-de-sac. You look for peace and happiness in the wrong places, and you're suspicious of anyone who tries to point you in the right direction. Don't look for it in externals. It isn't in the body. A great man can spring from a hovel. So can a beautiful and great soul from an ugly and insignificant body. For this reason, nature seems to me to breed certain men of this stamp, with the idea of proving that virtue springs into birth in any place whatever. Life is most delightful when it is on the downward slope, but has not yet reached the abrupt decline. And I myself believe that the period which stands, so to speak, on the edge of the roof possesses pleasures of its own. Death, however, should be looked in the face by young and old alike. We are not summoned according to our rating on the census list. Moreover, no one is so old that it would be improper for him to hope for another day of existence, and one day, mind you, is a stage on life's journey. There are more things, Lucilius, likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. If you wish to set a value on yourself, put away your money, your estates, your honors, and look into your own soul. Remember that you are an actor in a play, the nature of which is up to the director to decide. If he wants the play to be short, it will be short. If he wants it long, it will be long. And if he casts you as one of the poor, or as a cripple, as a king or as a commoner, whatever role is assigned, the accomplished actor will accept and perform it with impartial skill. But the assignment of roles belongs to another. Hippocrates cured many illnesses, and then fell ill and died. Heraclitus often told us the world would end in fire, but it was moisture that carried him off. He died smeared with cow shit. Democritus was killed by ordinary vermin, Socrates by the humankind, and you boarded, you set sail, you've made the passage. Time to disembark. Then whenever you see someone grovel before another, or flatter them insincerely, you can safely assume that that person is not free, and not just if a meal is at stake, but even when they abase themselves for the sake of a governorship or consulship. In fact, you can call the people who behave that way for small gains petty slaves, while the latter deserve to be called slaves on a grand scale. We are deflected from the right course by riches, titles, power, and everything which is valuable in our opinion, but worthless when rated at its real value. For they are not praised because they ought to be desired, but they are desired because they have been praised. Whenever anyone criticizes or wrongs you, remember that they are only doing or saying what they think is right. They cannot be guided by your views, only their own. So if their views are wrong, they are the ones who sue insofar as they are misguided. I mean, if someone declares a true conjunctive proposition to be false, the proposition is unaffected. It is they who come of worse for having their ignorance exposed. With this in mind, you will treat your critic with more compassion. Say to yourself each time, he did what he believed was right. It does not matter how great is the flame, but what it falls upon. For solid timbers have repelled a very great fire. Conversely, dry and easily inflammable stuff nourishes the slightest spark into a conflagration. So it is with anger. The outcome of a mighty anger is madness. And hence, anger should be avoided, not merely that we may escape excess, but that we may have a healthy mind. Every circumstance comes with two handles, with one of which you can hold it, while with the other, conditions are insupportable. If your brother mistreats you, don't try to come to grips with it by dwelling on the wrong he's done, because that approach makes it unbearable. Remind yourself that he's your brother, that you two grew up together. Then you'll find that you can bear it. It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them. Death, for example, is nothing frightening. Otherwise it would have frightened Socrates. But the judgment that death is frightening. Now that is something to be afraid of, so when we are frustrated, angry, or unhappy, never hold anyone except ourselves, that is, our judgments, accountable. An ignorant person is inclined to blame others for his own misfortune. To blame oneself is proof of progress, but the wise man never has to blame another or himself. If you want to make progress, put up with being perceived as ignorant or naive in worldly matters. Don't aspire to a reputation for sagacity. If you do impress others as somebody, don't altogether believe it. You have to realize it isn't easy to keep your will in agreement with nature as well as externals. Caring about the one inevitably means you're going to shortchange the other. Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Things can't shape our decisions by themselves. If you decide to do something, don't shrink from being seen doing it, even if the majority of people disapprove. If you're wrong to do it, then you should shrink from doing it altogether. But if you're right, then why worry how people will judge you? We do not suddenly fall on death, but advance towards it by slight degrees. We die every day. For every day, a little of our life is taken from us. Even when we are growing, our life is on the wane. We lose our childhood, then our boyhood, and then our youth. Counting even yesterday, all past time is lost time. The very day which we are now spending is shared between ourselves and death. It is not the last drop that empties the water clock, but all that which previously has flowed out. Similarly, the final hour when we cease to exist does not of itself bring death. It merely of itself completes the death process. We reach death at that moment, but we have been a long time on the way. The following are non sequitur. I am richer, therefore superior to you, or I am a better speaker, therefore a better person than you. These statements, on the other hand, are cogent. I am richer than you, therefore my wealth is superior to yours, and I am a better speaker, therefore my diction is better than yours. But you are neither wealth nor diction. Our span of life is divided into parts. It consists of large circles enclosing smaller. One circle embraces and bounds the rest. It reaches from birth to the last day of existence. The next circle limits the period of our young manhood. The third confines all of childhood in its circumference. Again, there is in a class by itself the year. It contains within itself all the divisions of time by the multiplication of which we get the total of life. The month is bounded by a narrower ring. The smallest circle of all is the day, but even a day has its beginning and its ending, its sunrise and its sunset. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? Remember that if you mistake what is naturally inferior for what is sovereign and free, and what is not your business for your own, you'll meet with disappointment, grief and worry, and be at odds with God and man. How foolish men are now. They whisper the basest of prayers to heaven, but if anyone listens, they are silent at once. That which they are unwilling for men to know, they communicate to God. Do you not think, then, that some such wholesome advice as this could be given you? Live among men, as if God beheld you. Speak with God, as if men were listening. Everything is here for a purpose, from horses to vine shoots. What's surprising about that? Even the sun will tell you, I have a purpose. And why were you born? For pleasure? See if that answer will stand up to questioning. No man can set in order the details unless he has already set before himself the chief purpose of his life. The artist may have his colors all prepared, but he cannot produce a likeness unless he has already made up his mind what he wishes to paint. The reason we make mistakes is because we all consider the parts of life, but never life as a whole. Nature is like someone throwing a ball in the air, gauging its rise and arc, and where it will fall. And what does the ball gain as it flies upward, or lose when it plummets to earth? What does the bubble gain from its existence, or lose by bursting? And the same for a candle. Our plans miscarry because they have no aim. When a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the right wind. Chance must necessarily have great influence over our lives because we live by chance. It is the case with certain men, however, that they do not know that they know certain things. Just as we often go searching for those who stand beside us, so we are apt to forget that the goal of the supreme good lies near us. Stick to what's in front of you. Idea, action, utterance. This is what you deserve. You could be good today, but instead, you choose tomorrow. Turn it inside out. What is it like? What is it like, old, or sick, or selling itself on the streets? They all die soon. Praiser and praised, rememberer and remembered, remembered in these parts or in a corner of them. Even there they don't all agree with each other, or even with themselves, and the whole earth a mere point in space. Away with all these treacherous goods. They look better to those who hope for them than to those who have attained them. If there were anything substantial in them, they would sooner or later satisfy you. As it is, they merely rouse the drinker's thirst. Away with fripperies, which only serve for show. As to what the future's uncertain lot has in store, Why should I demand of fortune that she give rather than demand of myself that I should not crave? And why should L crave? Shall I heap up my winnings and forget that man's lot is unsubstantial? For what end should I toil? Lo, today is the last, if not it is near the last. To feel grief, anger or fear is to try to escape from something decreed by the ruler of all things, now or in the past or in the future. And that ruler is law, which governs what happens to each of us. To feel grief or anger or fear is to become a fugitive from justice. The only thing that isn't worthless, to live this life out, truthfully and rightly, and be patient with those who don't. To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it. Do you ask me what you should regard as especially to be avoided? I say, crowds. To consort with the crowd is harmful. There is no person who does not make some vice attractive to us, or stamp it upon us, or taint us unconsciously therewith. Certainly, the greater the mob with which we mingle, the greater the danger. Even Socrates, Cato and Lucilius might have been shaken in their moral strength by a crowd that was unlike them. So true it is that none of us, no matter how much he cultivates his abilities, can withstand the shock of faults that approach, as it were, with so great a retinue. Much harm is done by a single case of indulgence or greed. The familiar friend, if he be luxurious, weakens and softens us imperceptibly. The neighbor, if he be rich, rouses our covetousness. The companion, if he be slanderous, rubs off some of his rust upon us, even though we be spotless and sincere. What then do you think the effect will be on character when the world at large assaults it? You must either imitate or loathe the world. Some things are rushing into existence, others out of it. Some of what now exists is already gone. Change and flux constantly remake the world, just as the incessant progression of time remakes eternity. We find ourselves in a river. Which of the things around us should we value when none of them can offer a firm foothold? Like an attachment to a sparrow, we glimpse it and it's gone. And life itself, like the decoction of blood, the drawing in of air. We expel the power of breathing we drew in at birth just yesterday or the day before, breathing it out like the air we exhale at each moment. You should not copy the bad simply because they are many, nor should you hate the many because they are unlike you. Withdraw into yourself, as far as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. Everything derives from it, that universal mind, either as effect or consequence. The lion's jaws, the poisonous substances, and every harmful thing, from thorns to mud, are byproducts of the good and beautiful. So don't look at them as alien to what you revere, but focus on the source that all things spring from. The ungrateful man tortures and torments himself. He hates the gifts which he has accepted, because he must make a return for them, and he tries to belittle their value, but he really enlarges and exaggerates the injuries which he has received. And what is more wretched than a man who forgets his benefits and clings to his injuries? One man dies young, another in old age, and still another in infancy, having enjoyed nothing more than a mere glimpse out into life. They have all been equally subject to death, even though death has permitted the one to proceed farther along the pathway of life, has cut off the life of the second in his flower, and has broken off the life of the third at its very beginning. Some get their release at the dinner table, others extend their sleep into the sleep of death. Some are blotted out during dissipation. Now contrast with these persons individuals who have been pierced by the sword, or bitten to death by snakes, or crushed in ruins, or tortured piecemeal out of existence by the prolonged twisting of their sinews. Some of these departures may be regarded as better, some as worse, but the act of dying is equal in all. The methods of ending life are different, but the end is one and the same. Death has no degrees of greater or less, for it has the same limit in all instances, the finishing of life. I could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about other people, unless it affects the common good. It will keep you from doing anything useful. You'll be too preoccupied with what so-and-so is doing and why and what they're saying and what they're thinking and what they're up to, and all the other things that throw you off and keep you from focusing on your own mind. You need to avoid certain things in your train of thought, everything random, everything irrelevant, and certainly everything self-important or malicious. You need to get used to winnowing your thoughts, so that if someone says, "What are you thinking about?" you can respond at once and truthfully that you are thinking this or thinking that, and it would be obvious at once from your answer that your thoughts were straightforward and considerate ones. The thoughts of an unselfish person, one unconcerned with pleasure and with sensual indulgence generally, with squabbling, with slander and envy, or anything else you'd be ashamed to be caught thinking. The fool, with all his other faults, has this also: he is always getting ready to live. Reflect what this saying means, and you will see how revolting is the fickleness of men who lay down every day new foundations of life and begin to build up fresh hopes even at the brink of the grave. Consider individuals, survey men in general. There is none whose life does not look forward to the morrow. What harm is there in this, you ask? Infinite harm. For such persons do not live, but are preparing to live. They postpone everything. Even if we paid strict attention, life would soon get ahead of us. But as we are now, life finds us lingering and passes us by as if it belonged to another. And though it ends on the final day, it perishes every day. We embrace evil instead of good. We pray for something opposite to that which we have prayed for in the past. Our prayers clash with our prayers, our plans with our plans. How closely flattery resembles friendship. It not only apes friendship, but outdoes it, passing it in the race. With wide open and indulgent ears it is welcomed and sinks to the depths of the heart, and it is pleasing precisely wherein it does harm. Show me how I may be able to see through this resemblance. An enemy comes to me full of compliments in the guise of a friend. Vices creep into our hearts under the name of virtues. Rashness lurks beneath the appellation of bravery. Moderation is called sluggishness, and the coward is regarded as prudent. There is great danger if we go astray in these matters. So stamp them with special labels.